June 28, 1919. The Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. The same room where the German Empire had been proclaimed 48 years earlier, where Bismarck had stood in triumph while French officials watched their nation carved apart. Now the mirrors reflect a reversal. German delegates stand at one end, Allied representatives sit at the other. There are cameras, witnesses, translators standing rigid. The Germans were told this would be a peace conference, but something is very wrong. They've been handed a 400-page document with 15 days to review it. They submitted written objections. Almost none were accepted. They are not here to negotiate. They are here to be sentenced. And what they sign today will not prevent the next war. It will cause it. Count Ulrich von Brockdorff-Rantzau, head of the German delegation, does not sit. He stands to read his response. A breach of protocol. A final gesture of defiance. His voice is steady, but his hands shake. He speaks of Germany's guilt, but also of the guilt of others. Of blockades that starved German civilians. Of promises made and broken. The Allied delegates sit in cold silence. When he finishes, there is no discussion. Then the signing begins. 20 years from now, what they write today will march back across Europe. 4 years earlier, the war had begun with parades. By 1918, it had consumed everything. 16 million dead, 20 million wounded. 4 empires collapsed: German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, Ottoman. Revolution spreading across Central Europe. Bolshevism rising in the East. Economies in ruins, cities starving. The Spanish flu is killing millions more. Infrastructure is destroyed. Governments are collapsing faster than new ones can form. The men gathering at Versailles in January 1919 are not writing peace from a position of calm. They are writing it from fear. Fear that the chaos will spread, that the revolutions will reach Paris, London, Rome. Fear that if they do not act decisively, there will be no order left to preserve. The treaty is being written under pressure to prevent collapse. This is not diplomacy. This is damage control. 3 leaders dominate the negotiations. Woodrow Wilson arrives from America with his 14 points, a vision of fairness, self-determination, a league of nations to prevent future wars. He believes this can be a just peace. Georges Clemenceau represents France. His country has been invaded twice in 50 years. 2 million French soldiers are dead. Entire regions are moonscapes of craters and barbed wire. He does not want justice. He wants security. He wants Germany unable to ever threaten France again. David Lloyd George represents Britain. He won re-election on the platform of making Germany pay. But privately, he worries. Punish Germany too harshly and you create instability. Too leniently and British voters will riot. They meet in closed rooms. They argue. They deadlock. Wilson wants principle. Clemenceau wants punishment. Lloyd George wants political survival. One of these positions will win. France will not compromise. Clemenceau has seen German troops in Paris. He has walked through villages destroyed by German artillery. He has buried a generation. He demands reparations, territorial concessions, military restrictions severe enough to make German rearmament impossible. Britain hesitates. But British newspapers are calling for German leaders to be hanged. Lloyd George's voters want blood. He returns from London with a mandate. Make them pay. Wilson tries to hold the line, but he is weakened. Republicans control Congress back home. His health is failing. He needs the treaty signed to secure his League of Nations. Slowly, Principle gives way. The treaty becomes punitive. This is the turning point. Article 231. It assigns sole responsibility for the war to Germany and its allies. Not partial responsibility, sole responsibility. This is the War Guilt Clause, and from it flows everything else. Germany will pay reparations, amounts to be determined later, but eventually set at 132 billion gold marks, more than Germany's entire GDP. Payments projected to continue until 1988. Germany will lose territory, Alsace-Lorraine to France. The Polish corridor carved through Prussia, splitting East Prussia from the rest of Germany. The Rhineland demilitarized. The Saar coalfields placed under international control for 15 years. 13% of German territory. 7 million citizens. Germany's military will be capped at 100,000 men. No tanks, no air force, no submarines, no general staff, no military academies. These are not just restrictions, they are messages. You alone caused this. You will pay for generations. You will be disarmed. You will accept this in front of the world. Humiliation built into international law. Here is what makes this explosive. Germany had surrendered in November 1918, expecting Wilson's 14 points. They believed they were entering a negotiated peace. Many Germans believed something else, too. That they had acted defensively in 1914. That Russia had mobilized first. That France had sought encirclement. That Britain had escalated the crisis over Belgium. That the war had been a tragedy of miscalculation, not German aggression. Right or wrong, this was the belief. And so when the armistice was signed, they expected fairness. Instead, they were excluded from the negotiations. When they arrived at Versailles, they were handed a document, not a negotiation, a verdict. They thought they were entering a discussion. They were handed a sentence. The German cabinet nearly refuses to sign. They debate resigning en masse, resuming the war. But the alternative is Allied occupation, starvation, complete collapse. So they sign. And the humiliation is complete. Now, belief is not the same as truth. And some historians argue Versailles was not uniquely harsh compared to other treaties of the era. But politically, psychologically, it was explosive. Within months, the consequences begin. The German economy, already strained by war, collapses under reparations. Hyperinflation hits in 1923. A loaf of bread costs billions of marks. Life savings become worthless overnight. People carry money in wheelbarrows. Pensioners starve. The middle class is obliterated. Veterans return home to unemployment and chaos. They fought for 4 years. They were told they were defending the homeland. Now they are told they lost because of betrayal. The stab in the back myth spreads. This myth is false. Germany's military had collapsed. The Western Front was broken. The war was lost. But the myth is politically powerful. It says, we didn't lose the war. We were betrayed by politicians, by socialists, by internal enemies. It says, someone must be held accountable. The Weimar Republic, Germany's fragile new democracy, is blamed for signing the treaty. They are called the November Criminals. Political violence erupts, assassinations, street battles between communists and nationalists. The center cannot hold. And in this chaos, extremists thrive. In Munich in 1919, a failed artist and war veteran begins attending political meetings. His name is Adolf Hitler. He is nobody. But he has a gift. He can speak. And he understands something crucial. The anger is already there. He didn't create the grievance. He didn't invent the humiliation. It was written into the treaty. It was carved into the national psyche. What Hitler does is weaponize it. He takes the treaty and turns it into a rallying cry. He takes the stab-in-the-back myth and makes it the foundation of a movement. He tells Germans they were betrayed, that their suffering is not their fault, that external forces and internal enemies conspired to destroy them. And crucially, he offers a target. Not the treaty itself, not the politicians alone. Minorities, neighbors, entire peoples. The anger would not remain political. What begins as political rage becomes something darker. Hitler rises through the 1920s and early 1930s. The Nazi Party gains power. Democracy collapses. And the anger, real anger, rooted in real suffering, is redirected toward Jews. 6 million murdered in concentration camps and killing fields. Toward Roma communities, destroyed across Europe. Toward Black Germans, sterilized under racial laws. Toward disabled people, killed in the name of genetic purity. Toward political opponents, imprisoned, tortured, executed. This was not inevitable. The treaty created conditions. It created grievance. But ideology was chosen. The anger was real. The target was selected. Return to the Hall of Mirrors, June 28, 1919. The signatures dry on the page. Photographs are taken. Diplomats shake hands. There is applause. They believe they have secured peace. They believe the war is over. Clemenceau will say later, "This is not a peace. It is an armistice for 20 years." He was off by 65 days. But in that room, on that day, something else was written into the future. Not inevitability, a possibility. A grievance that could be exploited. A humiliation that could be weaponized. They ended a war. They signed a grievance. And 20 years later, that grievance marched back across Europe. History doesn't only unravel in palaces and parliaments. Sometimes it begins on a street corner. Next on Lore&Ruin, Baltimore, 1849. One of America's most famous writers found delirious in the street, wearing clothes that weren't his, calling out a name no one could explain.